Hey everybody, welcome back to My Name is Dad. I would love to say what number episode podcast this is, but I don't know. This is something I'm just recording kind of, I don't know, not on my own, but I'm recording and it's going to be a multi-parter and it's probably going to be a long one. I don't know. The other day I was just thinking, I started this podcast and I thought, oh, it's going to be episode 2. And I said, I have no idea, but I thought, people should probably know, and maybe I should get off my chest of who am I? And I thought, well, maybe I should just tell my story, my biography in a way, from my point of view. We used to do the podcast Rank My Movies, and we would tell biographies of actors and actresses and all that stuff. I thought, well, maybe that's what I should do. Sort of give context, give foundation to what I'm doing here. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to go way back to the very beginning. And again, this might be a multi-parter, but that's what we're going to do. We got plenty of time, right? So my name is Brandon Scott Benson. I was born June 30th, 1983 in Riverside, California. And basically, from what I've been told, my parents lived in Palm Springs or the Palm Springs area. And you would think, well, they live in the Palm Springs. Well, how come you weren't born there? Well, apparently the closest hospital was in Riverside, California. And if you were to make that drive now, you're probably like, man, the traffic must have been terrible. But I guess back in the day, it wasn't that bad. Other than that, though, I don't know too much about that time. Obviously, that area. I couldn't tell you where anything is in Palm Springs or Riverside. I know Riverside has a college, and I drive through there every once in a while. But I know that my mom loves to tell the story of how I fell in the pool, and my dad had to jump in and save me, and I was walking along the first step, and I fell off, and But maybe if someday she's a guest on the show, she can tell the story better than I can. But then we ended up moving around a little bit from what I'm told or whatever. I don't really remember too much of anything from that, but I do remember when we moved to Lemoore, California. It was basically the Island District, out in the middle of the country, kind of out towards, actually really out towards the Naval Air Station, like the back gate. If you're from that area, if you're a Navy brat or something like that, you might understand what I'm talking about, but it's out there. So this is kind of like, let me guess here. I mean, this is before I went to kindergarten. So we're talking, this is, I was born in 83. We're talking like this is late 80s at some point here. And I did actually look it up that around that time, the population of Lemoore was about 9,000 to 10,000 people. Now it's about 25,000 people. But from what I remember, there was a small town. There was a Kmart, there was a grocery store, some gas stations, stuff like that. But from what I remember, it was a farming town. It was you either were the farmer, you worked for the farmer, or your dad was in the Navy. Seems to be about all it was. That's especially where I went to school. You were the child of a farmer, or you worked for that farmer, or your dad was in the Navy. That's about how it was. It seemed like back in the day. I grew up in a house. Again, I have one older sister, a younger sister, and a younger brother. So I'm the second of 4. My older sister was born, I believe, in 81, and I'm 83. And then my younger sister, she's like 3 years behind me. And then my younger brother is a year or 2 behind her. So there's a little gap there, but not much. And we pretty much, when we lived in Lemoore, my parents rented a house. And from what I remember, this was the scariest house that you could ever rent. This house was in the middle of nowhere. It had a driveway that was a third of a mile long. It was along the river. It was in the middle of farm fields. It was like our own little isolated island out there in this house. It had a long driveway, as I said. It had like this old barn that like looked it could crumble at any moment. An old barn though. It had an attached but separated garage. So where the house was, there were like some oak trees out front and stuff, and then the garage was separated from the house, but it was like a breezeway, so it actually technically was connected. There was like a little like breezeway covering, that was all like stucco or whatever it was. I don't remember, but the garage was absolutely terrifying. The laundry room was in there. There was like cobwebs and spiders everywhere, probably thousands of mice. It was just absolutely frightening. This house. So apparently in this house, someone actually had killed themselves in this house, and we lived there. Maybe that's probably how they got such a great deal on it. I don't even know what the rent was back then. But it was a scary house. But as I said but during the day, it was a fun house because we were kind of isolated. We had the river. We had plenty of space. We had an above ground pool, little doughboy pool my mom took care of. Plenty of space to ride your bike or ride the quads or do whatever you wanted, shoot the BB gun, whatever. I know we kept some of the horses and chickens and stuff around. But so the house was fun. And especially because the river was there, we had, at the time, we had quite a few friends who also lived along the river, across the river, whatever it was. And the river was always dry because of the drought. Nowadays, I go to my parents' house and the river's always got water in it and stuff. But back then, it was bone dry. It was sand at the bottom of this thing. So we would go and play in the river all the time. I remember right by our little pathway to the river, there was this like little bamboo little thing, just like bamboo stuff. And we had like cut some of the bamboo down and made a path through it. And I was just, now I think like how many spiders and like critters were in this bamboo that, could have seriously done some damage to us, or like, how many black widow bites we could have gotten just playing out there in the river. I have no idea. But the house is super memorable to me. I do remember when the one night when all the sheriffs came, like flying down the driveway and flying down the river, and there were like people running everywhere, and there was like cockfights or something going on, and people were just running everywhere trying to run from the cops. That was always a memorable night. And the fog. If you haven't, you don't know what fog is until you've seen some two-leaf fog in San Joaquin Valley, Central Valley there. The fog at this house was like, again, you couldn't see your neighbor's lights. Like it was, you were isolated at this place. So this is also the house where, growing up, I was a young kid, and this is the house I saw The Exorcist in. This is also the house I saw Fire in the Sky in as a young child. That scarred me pretty good. That definitely left an imprint. And again, you're out in the middle of nowhere in this house. I felt like, at night, it's just dark because there was corn, or there was alfalfa or something that you couldn't see your neighbors, or there was fog or whatever it was. You just totally felt isolated. This is also where I remember my oldest sister. She got stung in the face. We had a lot of hornets' nests or wasps' nests around the house, and she somehow got into one and got stung in the face a bunch of times. And these were like maybe like, it wouldn't even be like those black wasps or something. Man, they were ferocious. Also, as I started growing up, I remember my dad would always want me to mow the yard. Yeah, you got there and mow the yard. But our front yard was basically dirt and gopher holes and gopher mounds and, old dried up oak branches and twigs and stuff that when you mowed it, like the branches would just shoot out of the mower and like just like rip up your shins and stuff. Like it was not like a super nice place. But for us, for me and my older sister, it was definitely home. We definitely grew up there. A lot of super good memories, a lot of Christmases there and Easters and all that stuff. I remember relatives come to visit and all that stuff. And it was fun. It was fine. Again, it was definitely kind of a scary house, but a fun house at the same time. The one thing though that was like the other thing was that the elementary school I went to, it was pretty close by. We rode the bus. We a lot of times we walked to school. We rode our bikes to school. I remember we did do some of that. But we definitely would take the bus home. But we were always we were so close to the school. Like across the street was almost basically like the playground area of the school. It was a little farther, but we would be like the fifth or sixth kids dropped off from the bus. It was pretty close. But again, she didn't drive down the driveway. She dropped us off at the street and said, "See you later. Walk down the street there, or walk down your driveway." So we definitely got plenty of steps in every day. I went to this elementary school. It's called Island School, and it basically it's out in the country. And basically there's 30 kids per class and one class per grade. And, you went to school. Again, a lot of my friends were the farmer's kids or the kids who worked for the farmer, or they were Navy kids or something like that, But again, you went to school with these kids. Really, the farmer's kids, you went to school with them the whole time. Kindergarten, 8th grade, it didn't change. Now, the Navy kids, they swapped out every once in a while. Some of the kids, English was not their first language. It's totally fine. I actually kind of appreciate it now because I learned so much for them. Just the culture and, some of the language and stuff from them that I didn't realize that I had learned over the years and stuff. But so again, I went to Island School, kindergarten to 8th grade. I when I was younger, I had to go to speech therapy. I guess people could barely understand what I was saying. I hope you can now, but I like to think that I was an okay student. I don't know if I was great. I know my sisters were like straight A students, and I was not. But I don't think I was a bad student or a terrible student. It probably got worse as later on, but for the most part, I think I was just kind of like a forgettable kind of student there. I mean, I understand that, people remember me or who remember who I was, but I wasn't like the bad kid or the smartest kid. I was just a good old average kid. And, oh yeah, that kid. Yeah. Brandon. Yeah. He was just good old Brandon, but the school was fine. I don't have any problems with the school. I don't have any like super bad memories of the school. I made a lot of friends at the school that I still am friends with, at least Facebook friends with, nowadays. And again, if we saw each other, we would say hi and reminisce and all that stuff. I could find some of these people on Facebook and message them right now and say hi and how you doing and all that stuff. And that's something that I really appreciate. And I hope some of these people do also. I don't have, again, I don't have too many crazy memories. I played sports in school and, started playing youth sports, and our school was big into, the school sports. We played flag football and basketball and track and field and volleyball. And I learned how to pole vault, when I was there. And, it was just a normal little old school out in the middle of nowhere. It was a great little school. I don't have too many or any bad memories there, quite honestly. So really, I went to this little school, 30 kids per class. And basically, if you asked me, I would tell you that I had a very normal childhood, nothing crazy, nothing extreme, nothing, way out of the wild, anything like that. My dad was a pharmacist who, at the time when we first lived in the old rental house that I described, that, my dad was a pharmacist and he was putting everything he had, all of his effort into this business. And I'm not going to say we were poor, But there was definitely a budget, right? There was definitely a budget. We did not have, the best of everything, but we definitely had more than plenty. We had enough, and we had plenty to have a happy childhood, a happy life, and all that stuff. Again, well, a lot of our stuff was bought used, but I didn't care. We had it, like we lived good, in my opinion. I don't know if my younger sisters and brothers would see it that way, but I think me and my older sister, we remember when there was a budget, and it was tight for a while there. I remember going to the grocery store and going to the Food for Less or whatever it was, and we all went together, and there was a budget, and we all packed the groceries together, and we had a great time. It was like a big family bonding thing. So again, it was it was fine. It was great. Now, my mother did daycare. I remember there was always kids at the house all the time. My mom always had something going on, some sort of business thing going on. She's cheerleading or embroidery or selling cheerleading uniforms, whatever it is. My mom's always got something going on. I remember we did a lot of camping growing up. That we would see both sides of the family when we went camping. We would see my dad's side and my mom's side. I would say maybe we saw my mom's side a little bit more. They seemed just to be a little bit more wanted to go out and do something every Labor Day, Memorial Day, like every holiday. They wanted to go out and do something. And they wanted to go to Yosemite. And, my dad's side kind of was like, yeah, we do this stuff on these days or this holiday or whatever. And one of them was around my birthday. And we go to Lake Isabella, and that's how I ended up taking my kids there a couple years ago. But yeah, Lake Isabella was a big one on my dad's side. And on my mom's side, they wanted to go to Yosemite and Bass Lake and Pismo and, Glamis and all that stuff too. So again, I remember I have good memories and fun with my cousins and aunts and uncles and all that stuff. I felt not super close, but I felt close with them because we didn't live in the same town as them. But I felt I saw them enough or plenty of times that I felt, super nice and comfortable with them. So I talked about the old house, the old scary haunted house. I do remember when my dad purchased, or somehow, I don't know what he did, somehow he acquired this plot of land, out again in the Island District, but it was a little bit farther out. And I remember he when he drove us out there and was like, look, you see this land? That's ours. And you see that little house pad? Yeah, we're going to build a house there. And we did. He did it. He said he was going to do it, and he did. I remember the house being built, and we would go out there and check in on it all the times. And that the summer before we could move in, with the rent or the lease on the rental house had gone up, and we had to live in the motorhome, the old Bud motorhome, before we could move into the new house. And I remember seeing the frame, and I remember my dad woke me up one time or whatever. Maybe we might have been living in the house, and he was like, son, we need a trench. We need a trench dug from here to here. And he was like, you got to have it done by like 10 a.m. And probably in the summer or whatever it was. And I was like, well, all right, and I go to like start digging, and it's like hard as a rock, because a lot of those house pads are like compacted to like parking lot, like hardness, And I remember I'm over there like swinging this pickaxe and shoveling, and I'm barely getting anywhere. And I remember one of the construction guys came over and was like, hey, what are you doing over here? And I was like, well, there's like a phone line or something going in. I'm supposed to dig a trench from here to there, and he was like, oh yeah. So then he like started helping me, and he was like, holy shit, this is really hard. And then he was like, hey, you over there. And he's like, bring that trench over here. And then they trenched it and stuff. It was like, and I remember thinking like, oh my God, my dad's going to be so pissed that I didn't dig this thing. And I wussied out and had these guys help me, but it was hard. I remember it was like ridiculous. That is one story I definitely do remember about that new house. But yeah, we lived in our motorhome for the, I don't know, maybe I was like fourth grade going to fifth grade or fifth grade. I can't remember. But let's just say around fifth grade, we moved into this new house, and the old scary house went away and was forgotten, not for good, but I definitely put some of that behind me. So basically, and really around this time, we started getting into more quads and dirt bikes and all that kind of stuff. And the business was taking off for my dad. And, you know, we weren't necessarily poor anymore. I remember we had Prime Star. I don't know if anybody remembers Prime Star, but Prime Star was before DirecTV. Prime Star was like the very first satellite TV we get. So we were way out in the country. We couldn't get cable. We didn't have cable. You know, we had Rabbit Ears network TV all the way up to that point. So the first time I ever had cable was when we had satellite TV, and it was Prime Star. And then eventually I think DirecTV ended up buying Prime Star, and then DirecTV bought Prime Star, and then Dish came along, but the original one was Prime Star. I remember I loved it. I loved me some Prime, like to have all those channels. I was like fifth, sixth grade. Just like, this is the greatest ever. But yeah, we did get into a lot of quads and dune buggies and stuff. We had many trips to Pismo, even when I was younger. Before the new house, we did some trips over there, and the trips were always fun. I always loved going to Pismo, riding the quads and doing all that stuff. But I remember looking back now that it, you know, a drive to Pismo from our house was 2.5 hours, right? It shouldn't be that big of a deal, but it was. Every time we went to Pismo, it was like something happened. You know, that was like Bud, the motorhome, would be driving along and the lights would go out and we wouldn't have any lights. We'd have to stop and fix the lights, or we got a flat tire, or the brakes on the trailer stopped working, or something always happened. And it ended up being, this is a 2.5 hour drive, and now it's 6-8 hours. You know, it was like every time I couldn't understand, you know, how this could happen to us all the time. You know, and then I remember one time I went with our next door neighbors, and they were going like a day before or something like that before us. It was like 4th of July weekend or something. And I went with my next door neighbors, and we were driving along, and they got a flat tire, and they blamed it all, of course, all on me, because it was like the Benson curse. Like, oh, we got a flat tire because we came with the Bensons, you know, like a Benson came with us. Like, oh God. But it's just kind of funny that a 2.5 hour drive is like nothing to us now. But back then, man, that was even still, this was like in the 90s. It was like, that was a trek at some point for everyone there. But yeah, the trips to Pismo were just, I totally remember. We never stayed in a hotel or anything like that. We always camped on the beach. I remember, you know, going to Pismo, and we would rent the clamming forks. So back in the day, I guess I can say back in the day now, but you know, back in the 90s, you could go and clam, like real clams. Like you just stick the fork in the sand and pop out a clam. There it was. We also did some grunion hunting. For like the grunion runs, are like little fish that like swim off the beach, and you try to catch them or something. Man, those trips to Pismo were awesome. I remember they were all really, really good times. You know, definitely when I got, you know, 5th, 6th grade, 4th, 5th grade, that I played a lot of sports. I played soccer when I was a little kid and t-ball and all that stuff. But when I hit 10 years old, that's when I started tackle football. And, you know, tackle football was life to me. That was my favorite thing to do. But again, I played baseball, basketball, whatever season it was, I always played. And I made a lot of friends that way. I don't think a lot of the kids from Island School played a lot of the, you know, in town sports, but I did. I played every sport, and I made a lot of friends that way. And it just was, again, just such good memories, all that stuff. Again, I don't ever, you know, when I played sports, I remember that I was a good player, but not the best. I was like never the best on the team, but I was always way above average or above average. I don't know. My parents might tell you different, that they just made me believe that. I don't know. But I always felt like I was a pretty athletic kid. I was always kind of a chunky kind of kid. Still am now. But yeah, I don't really quite remember any really good stories. Other than, I did wrestling and football and baseball and basketball, did all that stuff. Did swimming when I was younger. Again, was never the best on the swimming team, but was always okay or good enough or better than average. Stuff like that. So I think what we're going to do, we're getting close to 30 minutes here. Let's just call this part 1. And when we come back, we'll start to get into high school and things get a little bit more exciting in my life, and we'll run through that. That might, even high school might be a 2-parter. I don't know. But we'll see what happens. So again, thank you this might not have been the funniest episode or the most entertaining, but you definitely have some context and some background of my childhood. And again, I completely don't have hardly any really negative memories about my childhood. I like to remember the good stuff, and there were a lot of very, very good memories. And again, I want to give a shout out to my older sister for having to deal with me and her in that surviving the haunted house on I don't remember what street it was, 20.5 Avenue, and a 3 mile long driveway. But okay, thank you for listening to My Name is Dad. Again, it's on Spotify pretty much exclusively. And I'll see you on the next part of Who Am I on My Name is Dad.